So today we are going to be doing some med calculation, just some basic med calculation. So right here, let me try to do a full screen first. So we are going to be doing about 16 questions. All right. So the best way, especially when it comes to me explaining this. So if you are a little bit good with some of this medication calculation, so what you can do before you watch the video, especially each question, just nice and pause it and just nice and work out the question yourself and see if we get the same answer. And if we don't get the same answer, then you can just nice and look at the way I set it up, because my goal is to assume everyone who is watching this med calculation has a limited math understanding. So I'm going to try to explain every step, but there are some information that I expect you to have memorized, especially when it comes to some basic conversion. And I'm going to be explaining everything to you. I promise you, if you just pay attention right here, I might even do better than your professor. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to add additional one. Let's add a calculator just to decide. I want it to be a little bit smaller. Let me see if I can move my... All right, let's see. Hope you all can see my screen right now. You know what? Let me just do a full screen. So whenever I need my calculator, I'm just going to go ahead and grab it. All right, let's go ahead with the first question. So for the first question, hope you all can hear me loud and clearly. So the first question, this is what we call a dimensional analysis. So that's what I'm going to be using in order to solve this. So I'm going to, again, try to make this as easy, simpler as possible. All right, let's go ahead with the first question. So the first question reads, the nurse received an order to give this medication orally, 500 milligram. The medication comes as 125 milligram per 5 milliliter. How many milliliter? So this is what we are looking for. Will the nurse administer? So now what you need to do, this is what was prescribed, right? And this is how the medication, the available. So now we are looking for milliliter, right? How many milliliter based on this? So then the first thing you need to do, just nice and write your unit, the unit you are looking for, which is milliliter, which is equals. So now you go to what? What was given, the available. Just start with the number that matches your unit. So in this case, we're going to start with 5 milliliter per 125 milligram. So then we're going to multiply that with what? What we are looking for in milliliter. So now when you do your unit cancellation, so now you see your unit milliliter is equivalent to what? Milliliter. So then your answer will be what? 5 times 500. That will be what? 2,500 divided by 125. Don't forget your unit. Just carry your unit as you go. So then you can nice and make sure it does make sense. So then I'm going to nice and add my screen right here. So 2,500 divided by 125 equals 20 milliliter. All right, so let me go back again. So the way I got my 2,500 is what? You always multiply the top. Especially when you are multiplying, you have to make sure you are multiplying the top. Multiply by the top. So now I did 5 times 500, which is the 2,500, Then I just nice and divide it by the 125, and that's why I get the 20 milliliter. So now we can see, does this really make sense? So now you can go from right here. So you can see right, so you have 125 milligram per 5 milliliter. So now we are dealing with 500. So that means we expect the milliliter to be a little bit much more higher than this. So think about this. If I double this number up, what am I going to get? I'm going to get about 250. So that means this number right here will be double. So that means I'm going to be what? At 10 milliliter. So now if I do this 4 times, if I multiply this by 4 times, that means I need to multiply this by 4 times. And 4 times of this will give me 500. And I know if I multiply this by 4, that will give me 20. So it does make sense. So that's what you need to do. So especially think about this. So if I do 125 milligram per 5 milliliter, it's the same thing as me talking about, okay, for every 5 milliliter, you have 125 milligram when it comes to the interpretation of this. So that's why this makes sense. All right. Hopefully everyone got the answer for number 1. All right. Let's go ahead for number 2. So you can go ahead and pause this and try to solve this yourself. All right. Let's go ahead with number 2. So the nurse received an order for Cipro 4 milligram by mouth 3 times a day. The medication is available in a 200 milliliter bottle. Label 6 milligram per tablespoon. How many milliliter would the nurse administer per day? Calculate to the nearest tenth. All right. So many of you might look at this question and be like, oh, this is a little bit tricky, but let's interpret this together. All right. So the nurse received an order for Cipro 4 milligram by mouth 3 times a day. So that means this medication needs to be taken how many times a day? 3 times. So now they're talking about this. The medication is available in a 200 milliliter bottle. Label 6 milligram per tablespoon. So that means they are telling you, so they have this medication right here inside this big bottle that is labeled what? 200 milliliter. But the medication inside is just 6 milligram per what? Teaspoon. So that means we only need to worry about this. No one care about the container. So that means we are really not going to be using the 200. So this is just our excess information. So now what are we looking for? We are looking for how many milliliter we did not administered per day. Very, very important information right here. All right, so now you can see. So we are looking for milliliter, but when we look at the question, this is where they want to trick you. You are like, oh, this is milliliter, so that means I need to use this. But no, you are not using this. We only have to deal with this is what available. So that means we need to do some conversion from what? Milliliter to teaspoon. And if you remember, let's make sure you still remember your conversion table. So when we're talking about 1 teaspoon is equivalent to how many milliliter? 5 milliliter. How about 1 tablespoon? Tablespoon is a little bit bigger. That would be what? 15 milliliter. All right. So since we're doing a dimensional analysis, so I'm going to show you 2 ways you can solve this. You can either solve this in a way whereby you just put everything together, you don't do your conversion early, or you can nice and do your conversion on the side, then just nice and bring them in. So again, we are looking for milliliter. Just nice and put your milliliter right here, which is equals. So what is given? Just think about your tablespoon. That would be the what? The volume, right? So then I can do 1 tablespoon, or teaspoon, per what? 6 milligram. Hope that is making sense. All right, so then what am I going to do now? I'm going to nice and do my conversion because I don't like seeing a teaspoon right here. So then what I can do, I can just nice and go right here on this side. Then I can do 1 teaspoon. Since you know you need to cancel, so that means you put that in the bottom equals what? 5 milliliter. Hope that's making sense. And what are we giving? What are we prescribed? 4 milligram. Are we done? No, not yet. But now you got to look at this. This medication is prescribed, but how many times per day? What is the question? How many milliliters would the nurse administered per day? Very important information. 3 times per day, so that means we just multiply that by what? By 3. All right, so now let's see if the unit cancel. You can see this teaspoon cancel teaspoon, milligram cancel milligram, then you only left with the milliliter. So now you can do your multiplication. So now I can do 5 times 4 is what? 20. 20 times 3 is what? 60. All right, so now we milliliter, carry your unit. Very, very important, divided by 6. So now 6 divided by 60 is what? 10 milliliter. All right, let's make sure we do our calculation correctly. It's always good to always check because you never know. 5 times 4 times 3. Again, so you can nice and see 5 times 4 times 3. That's 60 divided by 6. And just like that. All right, so again, another way you can do this. So I can do my conversion on this side. So I know my 1 tablespoon right here. I can do right here. So now I'm going to rewrite my available. So now I'm going to rewrite that as 6 milligram per what? Instead of doing 1 tablespoon per 5 milliliter. So now when I just try to solve that, then I can just do what? So that means for every 5 milliliter, I have what? 6 milligram times what I'm given, which is 4, which was prescribed. And we know we have to look for per day. So now we can multiply that by 3. You can see we still get the same thing. 5 times 4 times 3, that's 60. Because you see you can cancel your milligram, milliliter, divided by what? 6. Which is what? 10 milliliter. All right, if that makes sense. All right, let's go ahead on to number 3. So go ahead and pause the video and try to solve this question. All right, let's go ahead and solve this together. So the nurse is caring for a client who has hypertension and is prescribed Coreg 6.25 milligram orally. The medication is available as 3.125 milligram. How many tablets will the nurse administer per dose? Calculate to the nearest number. All right, let's go ahead and solve this together. So again, this is the what? The prescribed. What was prescribed? This is what is available, right? And we are looking for what? Tablet. So now we're looking for in a whole number. So now we can do right there again, tablet. Just nice and put in what you are looking for. Equals All right, so what are we giving? So that means for every one tablet is what? 3.125 milligram. So then what was prescribed? So we will prescribe 6.25 milligram. So now you can see milligram cancel milligram, which is equals our answer in what? Tablet. So then for that one, that will be, so we got 6.25 divided by 3.125. So that means you need 2 tablets in order to what? To fulfill that 6.25 Coreg prescription. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, let's go on to the next one. So again, some of this question might be straightforward and some of it might be a little bit not really challenging, just for you to really think about it. So then you can nice and see, does this make sense? So one tab is 3.125. Then when we're doing 6.25, we expect the tablet to be a little bit higher. And that's why we have 2 tablets. All right, let's go ahead and do number 4. All right, the nurse received an order for verapamil, 500 milligram, 1 time start, 1 time. How many capsules will the nurse give per dose? Calculate to the nearest whole number. All right, let's go to the back. Oh, all right. So we're missing this one. I won't go ahead and just nice and copy this. Let's take a snapshot. Then we just nice and copy there. Then let's go back to our question 4. Then we're going to go ahead and paste there. All right. Again, we are looking for what? How many capsules? So the medication comes in what? Right here. So that means for every capsule is about 120 milligram. So then in order for you to calculate this again, what are we looking for? Capsule. So now I can do capsule. You can write it down or you can do just caps. Equals. So I look at the label, what is available. So for every 1 capsule, it's equivalent to what? 120 milligram. So then what do? You multiply that by what? The prescribed medication, which is 500 milligram. So now you can see your milligram cancel milligram, then 500 divided by 120. What would that give you? Let's go to our calculator. 500 divided by 120. So then that would be what? 4 capsule. All right. So the reason why we put 4, even though it's 4.166, is because they want us to round to the whole number. But be careful, especially if the question was worded differently. So let's use this as an example. So 4.16. So for example, if the question asks you, that how many tablets would you need, or no tablet, how many capsules would you need to what? Fulfill this medication. How many would you say? It's not going to be 4. Because now you see got the 0.16. So very, very important to nice and read the question in terms of how many capsules we did not give per dose. But if they ask you in regards to how many capsules would the nurse need in order to what? Fulfill the prescribed order. Then it won't just be 4. So that means you got to be careful, especially when it comes to your rounding. So in this case, when somebody asks me that, I'm going to be more of you need 5. Then you can nice and split the 5th capsule in order to fulfill that 1.7. So this is just going a little bit away from the question, but it's just something for you to think about how important it is for you to make sure you are reading the question thoroughly. All right, let's go ahead and do question number 5. So we're going to speed it up a little bit since we already did 4, especially with some of the question that is related to the one that we've done. All right, so did not receive an order for verapamine 120 milligram orally 3 times per day. How many milligram will the client receive in a day? Calculate to the nearest number. So again, this is what did not receive an order for what? This medication, and the medication need to be taken what? 3 times in 1 day. So the question asks, how many milligram will the client receive in 1 day? So we don't really need to do any conversion, any calculation. We just need to do your what? 120. What? Multiplied by 3 per day. And that will be what? That will give you what? 3 times 120. Let's go ahead with our calculator. I know it's going to be around 360. So, but let's consult the calculator. 120 times 3. All right. So that would be 360 milligram per day. Again, that one is straightforward right there. All right, let's go ahead to number 6. So the client drank 15 tablespoons of cranberry. How many milliliter would the nurse recommend to the client intake in the client intake and outtake record? Again, what they're asking us is what? Conversion. 15 tablespoons to what? Milliliter. So again, you remember whenever I wrote down the conversion right here? So that's what we're going to be using in this case. So when we're talking about tablespoons, so 1 tablespoon is equivalent to what? 15 milliliter. So now in this case, we can just nice and write our milliliter equals. So we can do 15 tablespoon, right? Multiplied by what? For every 1 tablespoon is equivalent to what? 15 milliliter. So your goal is just to nice and get those numbers to cancel, and 15 times 15 is what? 225 milliliter. All right, hope you get that answer. Again, let's go ahead and consult our calculator. All right, excellent. So let's go to the next one. Hope this is making sense. If this is making sense, just nice and make sure you comment down below so I can ensure when I go to our part 2, especially when we start getting to some of those complex, then I can see ways to make it a little bit much more easier for everyone. All right, so the nurse is recording intake for a client in a shift. The client drank 3 ounces of water. How many milliliter? Again, this is we're just doing a conversion. So then what you need to do is just nice and memorize some of this conversion. So the way I remember this, just think about bottle of water. Bottle of water is typically around 9 ounces or something around that area. and sometimes they put about 120 milliliters. So then when we're talking about for every 1 ounces, it's equivalent to, so again, let me make sure you are not confused with the way I writing. All right, 1 ounce is equivalent to 30 milliliter. So again, looking for milliliter. So then what you need to do, just write what you are given. 33 ounces, I mean. And what? For every ounces is equivalent to what? 30 milliliter. So now your ounces cancel ounces, then 30 times 3 is what? 90 milliliter. All right, hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead to the next one. All right, let's go to this question. The client states they weigh 97.2 kilogram. The nurse is required to report weight in pound. How many pound, right, will the nurse recorded in the chart? Again, this is just more of like a conversion. So this is something you need to remember, especially for every 1 kilogram is equivalent to what? 2.2 pound. So then you can use that right here. So then we are looking for pounds, right? So then what was given? 97.2 kilogram, right? So then I'm nice and what? Doing my dimension analysis for every 1 kilogram. You can see my goal is just to cancel the kilo. That's why I'm putting that in the bottom, times 2.2 pound. So then if I cancel my kilogram, then you can see my unit match unit. So then 97.2 times 2.2, that's around 214. Let's see. So 97.2 times 2.2, all right, 213.8. 0.8 pound. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, let's keep moving along. Again, one of the best way, especially as you are watching me doing this, you can always pause before I start explaining each question. All right, let's go to question 10. So the nurse received an order of ibuprofen 150 milligram orally on time now, right? The medication comes as what? 200 milligram per 10 milliliter. Solution, how many milliliter is the nurse going to administer? Again, just nice and start with what are we looking for? Milliliter, right? Equals, what are we given? All the medication is available in what? In this. Again, start from the unit that you're looking for. Put that on top. 10 milliliter divided by what? 200 milligram. And what was prescribed? 150 milligram. So now if you cancel your milligram, then you get what? Your answer in what? Milliliter. Hope that makes sense. Let's do this. Then let me leave this. So now it's 10 times 150 divided by 200. So then that will be what? 7.5. All right, excellent job. Let's go ahead and do this one right here. Number 11, again, go ahead and pause the video just to nice and ensure you can just try it by yourself. All right, let's go ahead and read the question. So the client has been prescribed amoxicillin 500 milligram orally every 8 hours. The first dose is administered at 600. What time should the nurse schedule the remaining for the day? Again, in a day we what? 24 hours, right? So now the first one was given in the morning at 600. So now what you can do, you can just 600, just nice and add 8 hours. What would that give you? That would be 2 p.m., right? Which is what? 1400. So now if you add additional 8 hours to this, what would that give you? 10 p.m. And that would be what? 2200. How am I getting 2200? Just nice and, especially when you start going into the p.m., so especially if it's 1 p.m., just nice and add 1200. If it's 2 p.m., add 1200. So now this one is going to be 1400. And this one will be what? 1300. So just remember, when you get to the p.m., just add 1200. So that means at 12 p.m. is going to be 12 p.m. So it's going to be 1200 exactly. So if the time is at 6 p.m., just do 6 plus 1200. And that will give you what? 1800. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, let's go to number 12. So now you can see, so the nurse needs to administer 700 milligram of acetaminophen, Tylenol, to a patient. The medication is available in 250 milligram tablet. How many tablets? So now again, so what are we looking for? We're looking for tablets, right? How many tabs? Equals, what are we giving? So that means for every one tablet is equivalent to what? 250 milligram. And what are we looking for? 750 milligram. So now my milligram comes to milligram. So then 250 divided by 750, that would be around 3 tablets. Let's check it to make sure. It won't auto, always check your answer. 750 divided by 250, 3. All right? Hope that makes sense. Hope you get the same answer. So you can see as I'm reading, I'm also checking the unit to make sure the unit does match. All right, let's go ahead on to the next question. So the patient is prescribed 1.2 gram of ampicillin IV intravenous. So the available vial contain 600 milligram of ampicillin per 5 milliliter. How many milliliter should the nurse administer? Tricky one. So again, not really that tricky. Just nice and see. You can see the unit is a little bit different. And if the units don't agreed, and you're trying to use this number, is always going to be wrong. So the best way to memorize your gram, kilogram, microgram, milligram, just think about this. So if I'm going from kilogram to gram to milligram to microgram, if I'm going to the right, it's nice to think about multiply by 1,000. And if I'm going backward, just think about dividing by what? 1,000. So in this case, let's just nice and convert our gram to milligram. So you can see, so if I'm going from gram to milligram, so that means for every 1 gram, and multiply by 1,000 is equal to 1,000 milligram. So that way you don't have to memorize like, oh, 1 kilogram equals 1,000, 1,000 gram equals 1 kilogram. So you don't have to memorize that. Just nice and use this trick. All right, so now we're going to do the dimensional analysis. So again, what are we looking for? We're looking for milliliter equals. So you can see this is how the medication is what available. So that means for every milliliter, right? 5 milliliter is what? 600 milligram, correct? What are we given? 1.2 gram, right? And we need to convert this gram to kilogram. So now we're going to, for every 1 gram, we're doing 1,000 milligram. So now if I cancel, my gram cancel gram, milligram cancel milligram. So now I only got 5 times 1.2 times 1,000 divided by 600, which should give me, all right, let me use the calculator so we can all see this together. Again, so we got 5 times 1.2 times 1,000 equals 6,000 divided by what? 600. 10 milliliter. And you can always check it to see if it does make sense. So we're just going to convert this one, and that will be what? 1,200 milligram. So now you can see I'm dealing with 600 milligram per 600 milligram per 500 milliliter. So now if I double this up, you can see that's what it basically did right here. That's what it basically did right here. So now my milliliter should be a little bit much more higher, which does make sense. Very, very important. All right, let's go ahead. We're almost done. Almost done. Stick with me. All right, let's go ahead and go to number 14 again. The patient is prescribed 25 milligram for promethazine IM intramuscular. The available vial is labeled 500 milligram per ml. How many milliliter? So we asked to calculate milliliter. All right, this is how the medication is available, and this is the order. So go ahead and pause, then just come back. All right, so we got milliliter equals available, right? For every 1 milliliter is equivalent to what? 50 milligram. And this medication we prescribed that, what was prescribed, what? 25 milligram. This is what was prescribed. So milligram cancel milligram, right? 25 divided by 50. That's relatively about half, but let's do the calculator. So that would be what? 25 divided by 50, which would be 0.5 milliliter. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, let's go ahead and head to our last page. All right, let's go ahead and read the question together. Again, go ahead and pause this video. All right. So the patient is prescribed 250 milligram of ampicillin to be administered intravenously. So the available vial contains 500 milligram of ampicillin in 10 milliliter. How many milliliter should the nurse administer to meet the prescribed dosage? All right, again, pause the video. So we're looking for milliliter equals available, right? This is what the medication, how the medication is available. So again, start from what we're looking for. 10 milliliter per what? 500 milligram times the prescribed 250 milligram, right? So milligram cancel milligram. So now we can get our answer, and it was milliliter. So again, let's go ahead and do this together to make sure we get the same answer. So then that will be what? 10 times 250 divided by what? Let me see. 500, which is what? 5. So now you can look at this. Does this make sense? 500 milligram in what? 10 milliliter, and was prescribed 250. So that means the milliliter should be less. You can see right here. Does make sense. All right, now we are on to the last one. Let's go ahead and just deal with this one. So again, let's read the instruction. So the nurse is preparing an IV intravenous injection of dropeditrol of 0.625 milligram for PONV. How many milliliter should the nurse draw up into the syringe? So again, this is what was prescribed, right? We are looking for milliliter. This is the vial. So now we look at the vial. So the vial said for every 5 milligram is what? 2 milliliter. Again, we're looking for milliliter. Just nice and write the unit that you are looking for. And right here. So we have for every 2 milliliter is equivalent to what? 5 milligram. Just multiply that by what? The prescribed. So then just cancel. Then your answer should be what? Let's give the calculator a call. So then that will just be 2 times 0.625 divided by 5 equals. So let's see the question. So what was the answer? 0.25. But what was the question? Full screen. So now you can see the question to the nearest tenth. So nearest tenth would just be what? 0.3 milliliter. All right. So then the last question: what size syringe should you use to draw up this medication? As you can see, this is a very, very small dosage right here. So that means we want a very, very small syringe. For example, we don't want like a 10 mil syringe. So that means we are doing like maybe like 1, but then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 2. You know, that would be very, very difficult for you to nice and get the accurate draw up of this small medication. But now if we use like 1 mil syringe, so then that's where you can start getting like maybe like small 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, all the way to 1. So this one will be a little bit much more easier. So we're just going to pick the smallest one, and we're going to use just the 1 mil. All right, so that should do it for all those calculations. If this is really helpful, just make sure you nice and share this with your friend who struggle with med calculation. And this is just, I just say part 1. Because for part 2, that's when we're going to get into more of those Let's label this one part 1. All right. So then when we get to part 2, that's when we're going to get into much more complex one, dealing with weight-based medication. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and see you.